Welcome to the Inevitable You podcast. This is your host, Brian Hemmer, and we're joined again by my good friend Walter Goodwin for the fifth part of our series with him and continuing the discussion around energy management and how do we manage our own energy, how do we gain and lose it, and specifically, how do we use mindfulness and meditation to accomplish this. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between mindfulness and meditation and really get into the nitty gritty, the practical, specific applications around meditation. How do you do it? How do you start it for those who have never tried it before? What should you be focusing on? And some specific techniques that you can use to really get a great experience with your meditation practice. So without further ado, here is Walter again for another fascinating discussion. And if you enjoy this discussion and you want to learn more about meditation and mindfulness and reach out to Walter, please go to his website, ironbirddharma.com. I guess where we could start here is first defining or describing the difference between mindfulness and meditation.
Okay, I think it's a great place to start. And I'm always challenged to come up with good answers. What is the difference? I have to think about it. Well, the way I tend to think of mindfulness for starters is it's something I think you practice throughout the course of your day. And, back to what you were saying in the introduction, I do like to frame everything with this perspective of energy management affects your consciousness, it affects your state of mind. People like Don Juan would say your state of attention, your state of awareness. So everything, meditation and mindfulness, I also frame within that larger frame of this activity is something that can have a direct impact on our energy levels and our consciousness. So whoops, I'm sorry about that. So mindfulness, like I said, is during the course of your activities. And I tend to think of mindfulness, and you can Google it and see what, it's a very well-known and well-spoken about concept in Buddhist studies. And I'm sure everybody's got their own personal definition of it. But the way I tend to look at it is, some people say it's like being in the moment. And I'm kind of like, okay, I guess, but, does that mean if I'm thinking about what I'm going to do later today, I'm breaking all the rules because now I'm thinking about the future. So I'm not being mindful, or if I stub my toe and it hurts and I'm reflecting back on how I stubbed my toe, I'm not being mindful because I'm not in the moment somehow. I'm in the moment of stubbing my toe. So I'm not exactly sure how to look at it other than the way I tend to, which is as an observer. I tend to think of mindfulness as being very much equated to observation, but also that observation within the framework of your energy management and your state of mind. So as you're going through the day, you and I have spoken about this before too, some things push your buttons, some things frustrate you, some things, get under your skin in other ways. Some, the classic Buddhist perspectives on attraction and aversion. You're like worried about, well, how can I get that goal that I want? Or how can I not deal with that thing that's going to somehow undermine all my plans? And all that kind of stewing around is what you're trying to figure out how to avoid by being by practicing mindfulness. So, it's one thing to say, am I living in the moment or am I being mindful? I'm not sure ever how to answer those questions for myself, but it's a little easier for me to say, in this moment, in this meeting at the office, I'm getting really frustrated.
Mm.
And so now my emotions are getting the best of me. I'm not paying attention to what the current speaker is saying because
Right.
I'm still stewing over what was said 5 minutes ago and how I'm going to respond to that.
Right.
So I think we could all easily, quickly envision all these scenarios that kind of percolate up in the course of a day, every day.
Yeah.
And we and and we have, largely speaking for myself, often knee-jerk reactions, knee-jerk emotional reactions, knee-jerk desires and aversions that react to the original stimulus.
Hmm.
So for me, mindfulness is basically, am I just reacting to a stimulus, or am I being more mindful, to break a rule and use the word to define itself?
Yeah.
That am I being more aware and conscious in my, a little bit more,
Present.
crafted response? Am I more present in my response? And am I catching myself in some sort of repetitive behavior that I always do that doesn't serve me very well, maybe emotionally, maybe otherwise personally, but also as you start to think in terms more and more of your own consciousness as affected by your own energy, then you can kind of go, well, the next time that happens, I'm going to try not to knee jerk, and I'm going to try to just kind of pay attention to the energy transactions that are happening between me and other people, or also the energy transactions that are happening between the devil on this shoulder and the angel on this shoulder.
Yeah.
And where am I being torn in what different directions, or how do I typically react? And is there a way for me to react, which is more atypical for my behavior patterns or my personality, which I think would be healthier for me?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how I kind of look at mindfulness, is just, look at every situation and every thought and emotion you're having. You can get as granular as you like, and you could get to the point where you drive yourself crazy, and you don't want to do that either. But you can kind of go, well, how am I feeling, and how am I perceiving, how am I processing, and am I doing that in a healthy way, in a productive way, in an empowering way, or am I kind of knee-jerk reacting, spewing emotion, blah blah blah? And
Losing and depleting energy unconsciously, right? Or
exactly.
reactions, or getting triggered by things that aren't even, I mean, what comes to mind for me is like maybe a practical example is if I'm like meeting with someone, or let's say I'm sitting here with you, but I'm thinking about my meeting after this, or maybe me and my wife got in a fight right before this, and I'm still back there thinking about, and I'm not really with you, or you might say something that triggers something for me and I erupt, but we're just,
why?
you're like,
Right.
whoa, what the,
I didn't mean to say good morning with that tone.
Yeah, right.
Sorry. Yeah, no, that's it.
Or with like food.
That's it.
Food for, like, I think of mindful eating, not to bring it back to food where we started our conversation, but am I unconsciously just eating my meal because I just eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, or am I really enjoying it? Am I really tasting it? Am I chewing it intentionally versus just scarfing it down?
Exactly. That's exactly it. And yeah, I mean, those are great examples that, I mean, we're engaged in countless activities over the course of the day.
Yeah.
Even just eating, even driving the car, even, in those meetings, or engaging with coworkers or family or whatever. And each one of those is kind of an opportunity to say, am I reacting based on something that just happened? Is my mind projecting to something that's going to happen that I'm concerned about?
Mm-hmm.
And I love the eating example because, in our fast-paced society these days, you're encouraged to just kind of like, get it over with, like, got to get back to work, and there's none of this French cafe shit in our lives. It's just like, coffee on the run. We're breaking all the European rules,
Right.
So I think that those are perfect examples of like, can you catch yourself and can you say, am I doing this activity in a more conscious way, in a more mindful way, and even ask yourself, do I care, or does it make a difference? Well, should I
Right.
experiment with this? Like I don't usually care about eating mindfully. That sounds almost absurd. Like this is, kind of woo woo, psychobabble or something. But maybe I would say try it on. Try it on for size and go, well, how do I feel if I have a conscious meal, or if I'm, just not rushing through that or rushing through anything else, and paying a little bit more attention to it. And so I would argue that it changes your energy levels, and you have to try it out for yourself.
Mhm.
And then I would also argue that it changes your levels of clarity, which probably in turn affects your energy levels and stuff too. But as we're rushing through things and not catching all the details, we're missing so much. And
Yeah.
we're not experiencing, like you said about the food too. Maybe you're just not even tasting it. You're
Yeah.
not enjoying it to the degree
Yeah.
you should. You're not enjoying that activity and that opportunity. So,
Yeah.
I think there's a media.
Might be missing out on the actual experience of it, whether good or bad, of the actual present activity.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I think, and you bring up a good point too. Sometimes we don't want to experience certain things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we kind of block them or do whatever we do. And that's understandable. But I would say the more, the more conscious you are and the more you try to care about these details, then it serves you. It serves you energetically, and it
Yeah.
creates kind of a nice feedback loop that otherwise you're not having. And there's benefits in the moment, like you're suggesting, maybe tasting the food more, or enjoying the view, or whatever it is you're
Yeah.
doing, stop and smell the roses kind of thing.
Right.
There's definitely benefits in the moment. And then I would argue beyond that, there's benefits in how you're accumulating your energy and storing power, and is another term they use, and
Right.
things like that, just because you're not frittering it left and right, which is what we're kind of trained to do.
Right. Right.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
we're not trained to pay attention to that.
So it's more of a active moment to moment practice. And I think we touched on this in one of our conversations before, but I really like how you put it. Being able to get meaning out of, or practice these things in the mundane, or how do you make the mundane part of, the way, or I forgot how you put it, but I really like that. And because we get, I guess, maybe bored, or even we go unconscious in the mundane, because it's just like we go on autopilot, and that's where the unmindfulness kind of starts. But I think if you can reframe the mundane aspects of life as like each moment does mean something, that it brings more it brings more meaning into it. I mean, every moment.
Well put. And I think that, to paraphrase what you just said, and you hit the nail on the head. We tend to discount the mundane because it's what we're used to. And that's what happens largely when we're awake. We're just kind of going through the motions, and we're doing the stuff we do every day.
Yeah.
But the irony here is that because that's what we mostly do when we're awake, that is the very place where we should be paying more attention.
Yeah.
We're all looking for the sacred mantra, or the thunderbolt that comes down from God in the clouds and blasts us into awareness. But the truth of the matter is, where we gain or lose awareness is in all these mundane activities.
Right.
And that's the largest place where we're gaining or losing, whether we're free of our knee-jerk emotional reactions or not. So I would say that kind of retooling, where we try to remind ourselves that the mundane really isn't.
Yeah.
And that is what we do largely. So you can poo-poo it, or you can downplay it and say it's just the mundane, but the truth is that's where your energy exchanges are happening constantly,
Yeah.
is in those mundane moments. So the question is, can you improve them? Because that's what you're doing. It's a gradual refinement of all of your actions and reactions and your activities within this framework of like, well, how am I doing? How's my energy management? Where's my consciousness at? Am I frustrated and spewing energy? Am I being a little bit more patient and paying more attention, therefore storing energy? Am I sharing energy with this person in a healthy way?
Yeah.
And then you are living more in the moment, and you are managing all that more effectively and more consciously, and you're not sweeping it under the rug and pushing it aside as being something that largely doesn't matter.
Right.
Because I would argue, just percentage wise, in terms of how much time you're doing what with your life, it's the mundane that consumes the largest percentage of your conscious time, and therefore that's the place where you could pay attention and make the biggest differences.
Bill used an expression a lot that I really loved. I always hear it. It's before enlightenment I mowed the lawn, after enlightenment I mowed the lawn.
There it is.
Right. It's like
the modern version of the Zen one, where, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Right.
That's it. It's like how you do it that matters.
Yeah.
And how you're aware of it, and how you're focused on it, and where your mind is. I mean, as you and I have discussed many times in our calls here, where your mind is largely controls your experiences. That sounds silly to say, but that's the truth of it. So, what I want to say too about mindfulness is you regulating where your mind is. One of the terms I like to use comes from physics when they talk about quantum entanglement. Since I think everything's energy, and people are energy, and thoughts are energy, and everything's energy, it's you can kind of, from a physics perspective, understand energies affecting energies on a quantum level. But I want to extend that and say, well, if your mind is energy, what your mind is touching is having effect on your mind, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I like to ask myself, as often as I can remind myself, what am I entangled with? Where is my mental quantum entanglement? Because I believe that everything affects everything. All energies affect all other energies. So I have a responsibility, you could say, to manage where my mind goes and where it touches. And there's countless examples of, like, well, if you think about this one song when your girlfriend from high school broke up with you, all it takes is for your mind to go there, and you see this immediate reaction in your whole experience, right? So take that silly example and extrapolate it out. Our minds are constantly touching. And if that's energy touching energy, there's an exchange. We're constantly like swapping spit mentally. And so that's mindfulness, I know, in a nutshell, or as well, that where do you allow your mind to go? Because it's having an effect on you. What are you allowing your mind to touch? And so for me, that's an easier way for me to work with mindfulness than to just try to, be living in the moment. I'm not exactly always sure if I do that very well, but if I can just ask myself, where's my mind going? Because our minds just wander pretty aimlessly, thoughts come in, it's a squirrel, so we're all like that, so to what degree can we start to rein it in and say, well, I'm not going to allow my thoughts to go over there because it affects me negatively. And I'm going to try to put my thoughts over here because that affects me positively. And so it's that mental, emotional entanglement that I stop and think about.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how does meditation relate to this or differ from this? Because it, for me, it feels like meditation's just, it's kind of like a intense form, I guess, of mindfulness, or a more focused, intentional, like you're gonna set, some time, sit down, practice mindfulness in that moment, but done with maybe a different intention. Is that kind of
Yeah, I think
on the right
that's,
track?
as usual, that's well put. I'm not sure I ever quite thought of it that way, but now that you put it that way, I think I have to agree. Like that, you know, and having agreed with you, I'll point out all the differences now that we're in
Okay.
agreement
Yeah.
that they're the
Yeah.
same. But it's true. Like meditation is about controlling your mind, just like I just described. So this is a perfect segue. It's just that you're doing it in a little bit more of a controlled setting. You're sitting down, or you're doing some sort of exercises to try to calm your mind down, slow your mind down, you know, etc. And so I think from that perspective, maybe meditation is a kind of a quantitative difference from mindfulness as opposed to a qualitative one.
Mm,
But at a certain point, all that quantity adds up, and that becomes a qualitatively different experience, because you're not being conscious of all the activities around you in the world, or your reaction to those activities or whatever. And in those various moments of engagement, now you're trying to kind of strip those moments away and sit down and close your eyes or keep them open or whatever, and just basically say, um, where can I take this in terms of relaxation, or in terms of focus, or in terms of just mental acuity, mental control, and in terms of moving energy. So it gets there's a lot of different techniques, and there's a lot of different ways to do it, or things to hold in your focus while you're doing it. But I think largely, all of those things maybe come underneath an umbrella of shifting your energy once again, shifting your consciousness once again, and managing that emotional and mental and cerebral process, so that you kind of gain more control over your thoughts, over your emotions, over your, I guess I want to say, um, cerebral experience, or
uh-huh.
your perceptual experience. You want to gain more
Yeah.
control. In Buddhism, they often talk about that humans basically have what they call monkey mind, which means it's the monkey's just, flitting about from
Yeah.
thing to thing.
Yeah.
And you don't have that much kind of focus and control, and all of that flitting about is another kind of energy loss scenario.
Right.
And I think those of us who meditate or have meditated, and you kind of feel that calmness set in, it feels different. It
Yeah.
feels
Right.
like something that has shifted in you. So I think meditation is an extension of mindfulness, but it's one where you can have some of the outside distractions pushed away, and you can sit there and see, what kind of techniques you can use to create calmness in you, to create a little bit more mental control, which spills back into your life, to create a sense of feeling more energy in, literally, if you meditate powerfully, you can feel energy pouring through your body, and that's energy that you can use.
Yeah.
And and I think meditation is another form of what I was just saying about entanglement. What is your mind connected to, and what are the consequences of those connections? And meditation is a intentional refinement of those entanglements that
I see.
your mind gets into.
Yeah. 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 So we kind of touched on last time a little bit about, I gave the example, at least for me, my experience with meditation has been mostly getting to a point to calm the waters, right? Calm the chop or the monkey mind that
Hmm.
goes on. maybe at times I've experienced that kind of charging feeling or energizing feeling where it's, you know, how would I describe it? It's peaceful, but it's also, you can feel almost like a energy rising through the top, or almost an uplifting kind of feeling. So I wanted to go into, like, are there certain techniques that are aimed at doing, or having different outcomes like that, like creating calmness versus creating energizing? Like, if we could give some examples around some different techniques and kind of how to
Yeah.
go about it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It might be a chicken and the egg thing. I'm not
Yeah.
sure which experience comes first or whatever, but I think you probably can't have some of those more energizing or powerful experiences if your mind isn't calm to begin with. So
Uh-huh.
I think it kind of builds,
Yeah.
just to oversimplify or kind of do a broad brush.
Yeah.
So I think if we're agitated, we can't meditate well. So a good place to start is to do different techniques that settle you down or calm you. And ironically for me, like, I think trying to relax is impossible when you're agitated. So sometimes it's kind of like, if you have a focus that where you can channel your agitation, that helps you calm. So
Hmm.
I think there's a handful of different kind of focus techniques. Like, some people like to focus on the breath. I sometimes do, but I don't count them. But I just saw an Inc. magazine article. I probably have it around here somewhere on my desk, but about a study, I think at Stanford University, where they did a study on cyclic breathing, where they basically determined that there are better ways to breathe for stress reduction.
Uh-huh.
And the short version of that is breathe in through your nose, because apparently when you breathe in through your nose, it oxygenates your brain in a different way
Makes
than
sense.
if you breathe
Direct
in through,
pathway.
a little more direct, right?
Yeah.
So breathe in through your nose and exhale slowly. Like, take a deep breath in, hold it for a few seconds, and then slowly exhale. And as you exhale, let the tension move out with it. And I think it's simple, and simple is usually very effective. But also, the interesting thing too is, if people were to Google the vagus nerve and sympathetic nervous systems versus parasympathetic and stuff, for
Right.
as smart as our brain is, you can trick it, which
Yeah.
I wouldn't have believed some years ago, but now I feel it's true. So if you've had a stressful situation, let's say you almost get in a car accident and then you avoid it at the last second, what's a first natural reaction for all human beings is to go like,
Yeah. Right.
it just happens that way.
Yeah.
And that's like a signal that your vagus nerve sends back to your brain that says you don't have to be stressed anymore.
Mm.
Your brain picks up that signal and says, okay, but you can do that. You
Yeah.
can consciously
Yeah.
go,
Right.
and that's sending a signal to your brain that you don't have to be stressed, because my body just did a very non-stressed thing. So I think it's hard to just sit down and go, okay, I'm going to meditate, because we're too stressed and we got too much chatter going on. But
Yeah.
if you say, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to slowly exhale, and I'm going to convince myself and convince my brain that I'm in a de-stressed situation,
Mm.
it actually works.
Yeah. Yeah.
And along the same lines, I think this is a good segue. Like, a lot of Buddhist meditation, they chant mantras or things like that. You don't have to do a mantra. You can do Om, or you can do nothing. You could just say, peace or something like that. But
Yeah.
another thing about the vagus nerve is it runs out the back of your head, along your jaw, down, and it attaches to most of your major organs, if not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because it runs along your jaw and your throat and your muscles here, when you're humming or
Yeah.
singing or chanting a mantra, just like taking that deep breath and relaxing, if you're saying Om, that vibration is
Right.
telling your brain, well, I must be relaxed because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting around saying Om. If the wildebeest is about to leap on me,
Yeah.
my heart be pounding and I wouldn't be bringing attention to myself. So this must be a good situation. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think,
There's
controlled.
vibration quality, or not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but Om is like the sacred sound of the universe, isn't it? I mean, isn't that
That's
where
what they say.
the
Yep.
theory? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like is it the E note at the end of one of the Beatles songs or something, once
Yeah.
in the life or something like that. It just ends up with this there,
Yeah.
a lot of LSD went into coming up with that one note at the end of that song.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it's, I mean, I think the universe does have a hum to it. And I think that if you try to bring that relaxation technique in via breathing, via humming, via singing, just singing a song people don't sing typically when they're stressed.
Right.
So it's another signal that goes back to your brain. So, you don't have to be particularly spiritual or religious or Buddhist or anything else, just to pick a sound that works for you and
Right.
just say, this is going to be my sound I use to tell my vagus nerve to send a relaxation signal to my brain. And then I'm going to calm that chattering a little bit and then kind of take it from there. And that initial focus on your breath or focus on the sounds or a mantra or whatever helps you break the cycle, helps you separate yourself from the thoughts a little bit.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can do more focal techniques. Like you can do things like look at something pretty, like a flower or a candle flame, or pretty much anything. And, a light, colored lights, all kinds of good
Yeah.
stuff, statues, it could be anything, work of art. And bring your focus in with your eyes open. And again, that focus helps push aside the things that you don't want. Like
Right.
if I tell you right now, don't think about a pink elephant in a tutu, you just conjured that image up.
Yeah.
So guess what that did? It pushed every other thing out of your mind
Right.
because there was that image right there. So
Or
if you're
it's kind of like for a practical application of that, if you're sitting there, okay, I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to be angry. Yeah, I'm not going to be angry. Like you're still thinking about angry versus.
isn't that the classic don't spill the milk?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So that's it. Your mind's still there. Good golfers don't hit into the sand trap, then
Right.
off you go. So
Right. If they instruct bicyclists to look where they're going, don't look at the pothole because you tend to go where your mind is focusing.
exactly. So I think it's a well-proven technology and technique that, you're right. If you're focused on, I'm just so upset today, well, that you're caught there. But if
Right.
you say, okay, I am upset, I'm not going to think about it for a moment, and I'm just going to look at this candle flame, and I'm going to try and bring all my focus and all my attention to this candle flame. You try it for a little bit and you go, it's not working. Maybe I should do some breathing first because I got too much crap stored up in me. So I'm going to take a few deep breaths and I'm going to relax and I'm going to let all that stuff go. And then you go, okay, and almost there. Maybe I'll do a few ohms or something else.
Yeah.
And you just build and build. You throw a few of these techniques in, and then you get to the point where you can do some focus stuff, like external focus. And I guess hopefully this isn't diving in too deep, but internal focus I find to be, for me, particularly helpful, or a combo platter. Like you could have your eyes open and be looking at all the things I just mentioned, the candle flame or whatever, but if we loop back around to the beginning of this conversation where I always start, which is it's all about energy and it's all about entanglement with energy and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're energy, our bodies are energy. In our energy bodies are these very esoteric sounding, Eastern sounding things called chakras. I just tend to look at them as bundles of energy, but just like
Right.
it isn't strange to think that your heart is different than your liver,
Right.
and your brain is different than your kidneys. They all have a function. They're all different. They all work together to create you or to help you work.
Or your
There are,
reproductive center, your intestines, I mean, they all have very specific functions that are using energy in different ways, right? One's digesting food, one's producing, hormones, or
and they coexist within this larger framework that you call you, right? They have their different functions. So I kind of like the notion of thinking of chakras that way. They're just not physically manifest like your liver is, but they're doing things with energy, just like you just brought up. Your organs are doing things with energy too, and that's another conversation for another day. But the chakras themselves, I think, are kind of vortexes of energy.
Yeah.
And back to discussing entanglement, the way I see them is they're like portals. It's like you bring up a web browser. You could type in any URL and it just takes you here versus here versus somewhere else, right? That's I think of chakras as like energy URLs. They're just they will take you to different places depending on what you kind of type in. So the three main ones, classically there's 7. Some people say there's a lot more. Some people say there's chakras in your hands, and you can get, you can split your hair pretty finely on all this stuff.
Right.
But the main ones are at the root of your spine, near your sexual organs, around your navel.
Right? Sacral, and then we don't have to name them, but
yeah, I don't know all the names probably. And then there's like
root, sacral, then your intestines, right?
Yeah, some people say that's a navel chakra, and some people say it's a solar plexus, but it's kind of in that area around your navel. Some people say it's slightly below your navel. Some people say it's above, but in any case, that's kind of
a big section, though.
On me, it is. Then you go up from there to your heart chakra, and then your throat chakra, and your third eye chakra, and then your crown chakra. And some people say there's a few above the crown chakra too. But again, since they're energy portals, there's different energies, or since they're URLs, they take you to different places if you focus on them. And the way I was trained originally was that the 3 main ones to focus on, which tend to be easier and tend to take you to good places, are your navel chakra, your heart chakra, and your third eye chakra. And simply put, like in martial arts and in Chinese martial arts, they talk about the Dan Chin. In Japan, they talk about the hara, and that's your belly. And that's the center of willfulness or intent. So if you need to will your way through a situation or intend something to happen, then you can focus on your solar plexus or your navel chakra, and the place that takes you to is a place of willful intent. So that helps you to just knock the walls down and power through stuff once you've ascertained that that's the right approach. Then
we have like sayings for that, right? Like, do you have a fire in your belly, or right? Like,
exactly. That's exactly right. Exactly right. And that's why, when I do Tai Chi, and the Tai Chi instructor always talks about having your mind rest in your Dan Chin, having your mind rest in your intent. down in your belly and build up that fire in your belly.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, the fire's being stoked. From there, you direct it with your other intentions and choices. But if you don't have that juice going, if you don't have the fire, stoked, then you're essentially out of energy. And it doesn't matter how many great ideas you have or how well intentioned you are otherwise.
Yeah.
You don't have the wherewithal to. It's like having an empty tank. You got a beautiful Ferrari or something and no gas, so you're stuck.
Right.
So then, speaking of guiding or directing, if you go up to your heart chakra, which is, I was always told, if you take your finger and say me, your finger almost always goes to exactly the same spot in your chest. It feels very awkward to go me or me. In Japan, they go me.
Yeah.
Me. But you say me, and that's where your heart chakra is. And the heart chakra is all the things you would expect it to be, but it's also the central chakra. So it's about balance, and it's about that kind of emotional clarity and contentment and joy and all those kind of things. Happiness, a sense of being in balance. Compassion.
What you would associate your heart with, right? Like, do is your heart in it? Do you, right? I think of emotional connection when I think of the heart, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where that all originated, because people have been talking about your heart versus your mind forever. And so somehow or other, they must have figured out that emotions are kind of seated here as opposed to up here. Right.
Right. Well, I kind of think of it as it's the transportation organ, right? Like it's taking all of the chemicals that I'm producing and it's dispersing them to the rest of my body, right? And that's a large source of energy.
Well, that's a really interesting point too, because I mean, first of all, we all know that's true, and it is a large source of energy. So what you hold there gets dispersed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're holding anger and hate and jealousy and tension and all kinds of stuff there, guess what's being pushed through your whole body?
Yeah.
But if you sit down and meditate and you'd say me, and you maybe even hold your finger there while you're doing your om or just sitting there quietly or looking at the candle flame, you're consciously saying, so your mind is entangling with something, and it's entangling with something that's higher or purer or more compassionate or whatever. And then as you're engaging that way, you're absolutely right. Your heart's pumping those strands of energy through you. I completely agree with that. That's the case. So if you want to regulate what you're pumping through your whole endocrine system and how you're feeling and the vibes that you're pushing everywhere, go to your heart and purge whatever is troubling you as best you can, and try and find that place of balance and calmness and equanimity and peace and whatever. Maybe you're not just in this giddy, joyous, blissed out, joyful mood after 30 seconds, but at least you can be working at purging something that is not helping you and is being negative. And the heart is just like such a beautiful, safe place to be. It's like, just, you're there by yourself. No one else is meditating with you. You're there in your own mind, in your own heart. There's nothing that you have to worry about not being vulnerable to or anything like that. And you can just let some of the tension and the pressures and the influence go very consciously, and entangle your mind and your heart with the things that are healthier for you and that you want to.
Yeah. So it's really, I mean, what I'm hearing is using different methods of directing your focus, essentially, right? To train your mind to either, get rid of the monkey mind, calm the waters, maybe be less, if you're in an angry mood and you're trying to calm yourself down. It's just by directing your focus, be it an external object, a chakra, an internal object, your breath. It's just tools to help train the mind to direct it where you want it to go.
I would say largely that's true, and to overcome those initial hurdles. So, and those external influences bombard us constantly. we watch the news and we get upset about something, or we commute to work and we get upset about something else, and we are at work and we get upset about a lot of things. And so we're being bombarded, not to mention that on an energetic level, since people are energy, and since we're engaging with people and engaging with this world, we're engaging with lots of energy, which overlays us, and it helps keep us in that choppy monkey mind.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's important to counter that, like we all know, if it's Super Bowl weekend and you eat a whole bunch of crap food, that you're going to try to counter that for the next few days.
Right.
You're going to try and have some salads or eat a little bit less, or you're certainly not going to continue with the chips and dip and hot dogs and hamburgers and stuff. Well, for me, I don't know about you, but life offers a barrage of hamburgers and chips and hot dogs energetically, and we're getting hit with all that stuff. So I feel like we kind of owe it to ourselves to try to consciously counter that. And so sitting down in meditation and just trying to calm yourself down and largely purge all these things that aren't you. You feel all these feelings in you because all that energy affected you. It's like, I don't know, if somebody puts something hot on your skin, you feel it and you recoil from it, but that hot thing isn't you, but you had a reaction to that thing, clearly. So now you want to get away from that thing. So I see meditation as an opportunity to pull away a little bit, not as a lifestyle, but to pull away from all that overstimulation that we're getting constantly, and saying, I kind of, look, we all go out if we can, take a hike in in the green space, and go paddle a boat on the lake or something like that. It's all that is countering the bombardment. And if today you can't go for a hike, you can certainly sit down and say, how am I washing all this stuff away energetically? Do I have to go for a hike, or do I have to go rent a boat and go? Those are all lovely things to do when you can, but when you can't, why not work on letting some of this stuff go and washing yourself energetically and doing some of these practices, so that you start to let some of that initial stress go, and some of that monkey mind and choppiness or whatever. And then one thing you brought up was like, so I guess I want to say, is that all it is? As if that weren't enough, because I think that's pretty healthy. But imagine you were persistent enough. Well, it's like I went for a hike yesterday. I don't appear to have lost any weight. Why should I go for a hike tomorrow? I need to lose 15 pounds. So why should I do that? You haven't convinced me. Then you got to convince somebody, well, trust me, if you do it every day, it'll have a cumulative effect, and you'll be different 15 pounds lighter than you are today. It's going to be a different you. But if you don't do it consistently, you'll never experience that new you. So meditation is the same thing in my experience, my personal experience. If you do these kind of purging techniques and calming techniques regularly enough, you can slowly chip away at it and get a little bit ahead of the curve. If you do it once a month or something, well, going for a hike once a month is a good thing to do, but it's not going to horribly improve your cardiovascular system. You have to do it a little bit more frequently than that. So I know from my own experience that consistent meditative practices put you in a whole different place, just like consistent cardiovascular or consistent healthy eating. It takes time. And it takes commitment, and it takes, tenacity, and it's not always easy, and you fall off the horse all the time. But if you climb back on and say, well, I'm going to just test this out, and I'm going to try and hike 4 days a week instead of once a month or something like that, it has a cumulative effect, and you come out of it different. And meditation is a different experience. It fundamentally is a different experience over time, if you're consistent, than what most people think it is, because most people think of it as a great relaxation tool, and then they do it for a while, and then they go, okay, well, I felt better than I did, and I got
to get back to my to-do list.
That's it. And so thank God we have something that can help chill us out for a few minutes, but very, very few people take it on the way maybe an athlete would take on a comprehensive training or something.
Well, that's a great metaphor, because just as most people, I would say, would acknowledge the fact that, hey, you should probably exercise a little, 30 minutes every day. No one can really argue that that's not a beneficial thing for you. For the most part, people will do it. They'll make an effort to go exercise their bodies, but the same approach isn't really taken for their mind. Like, why would you exercise your mind regularly, or exercise your body regularly, but not do the same for your mind? I think
they're kind of connected.
Exactly. Exactly.
And the benefits go both ways. I mean, a lot of, I'm becoming a man of a certain age, and half the articles I read online are like the importance of exercise on your brain, the effects it has on your brain.
Right.
So conversely, we know that if our brain is chill, our mental state is chill, it has a good effect on our body. We're not pumping, what is it, cortisol or whatever, that that stress chemical.
Hormone.
The stress hormone, like, it's symbiotic. So we gotta all try to break those cycles of stress and pain and destruction. So I'm a big proponent of hiking and spending time in nature and all that stuff too. I think that's a very symbiotic, complementary set of activities. You can hike in a mindful way. You can go to the gym in a mindful way too. You can, but think in terms of purging, think in terms of energy manipulation, think in terms of my mind's affecting my body, which is affecting my mind. And all of a sudden you start to affect yourself in an upward spiral.
Right.
And so I just think that, unfortunately, because it's not part of our culture necessarily, although when I grew up, nobody did yoga. I mean, nobody knew what that shit was. So we've come a long way. But if people took their and we have a lot of problems, with issues in our society that show us how little attention we pay to mental health. So I think most of us would agree that we got some mental health issues as a society, and we should try to address them. I think most people aren't quite sure how to do that societally. But if you take that macroscopic level and turn it into the micro level of you and me, well, there should be something I should be doing regularly about my mental health. And we don't have to say I'm crazy, I'm starting off from a place of crazy, but we can say I'm starting off from a place of stress. I'm starting, which isn't ideal. That causes me some imbalance in my life, which is,
we know, science knows that, chronic stress over years creates diseases, creates ailments in your body, for sure.
All of them.
It starts up here. It starts with the thoughts that are occurring.
That's right. So I think, like, for me, I mean, people try to eat well, they try and exercise, like you said, 30 minutes a day isn't a lot to ask for. I think that this whole I almost hate to say meditation and mindfulness, because there's so many connotations that go with it already. I want to invent like a new word. Like sometimes I refer to it as consciousness practice, because, or energy practice, because it doesn't have all these Eastern connotations or, religious connotations. For me, none of this is religious. And I'm really close to saying none of it's spiritual. It's like, I really just believe, like, well, what's the difference? It's just me. It's my life. It's my body. It's my liver. It's my heart. It's my mind. It's my stress levels. It's my cortisol. It's my everything. It's all energy. It's all awareness. It's all connected. Like
it's a way of being, the physical, the spiritual, all of it. It's everything.
It's just a way of being. It is everything. It's absolutely everything. And so I think that the same people that are committed to eating healthier and maybe hitting the gym or going to the yoga studio or something like that, I would just encourage those people. This isn't that big of a stretch for you to try,
Yeah.
stop and think about it kind of intellectually. It's all connected. So what are you doing to get to the root of it? What are you doing to wash away all those stresses, all that energy? If it's all energy, which I always contend, then we're picking it up all day, every day. What are you doing to counter that? If you just had a Super Bowl party, what are you doing to counter that?
Right.
You have to be the one to see the benefit and the value. And science has given us plenty of evidence about eating healthy and exercising. And I think science has given us a lot of evidence to this point about the benefits of doing some of these, consciousness practices, energy practices,
for sure.
meditation, whatever you want to call it. And I just encourage people to look at life that way and say, well, like I said, probably very few people would say, well, I eat really well so that I don't have to exercise. Or other people would say, I exercise a lot, so therefore I can eat like shit. People will call bullshit on that right away. I'm out. So I want to argue those two things aren't quite enough to address what's going on in our endocrine system because of our stress levels, because of where our mind is at. And we're not trained well enough in how to manage our thoughts and emotions and how to create that kind of stillness, which leads to even more amazing vistas if you can train consistently enough.
Right.
Enough.
And that's easy to grasp. If you do work out consistently, you feel the effects it has on your stress levels. And it is kind of like that meditative practice where you're focusing on lifting weights or you're focusing on running, which is a lot of breathing. So it naturally does, have a clearing of the mind effect. But I think the distinction is making that conscious practice to actually sit with the thoughts. It's like, I think exercise can be used sometimes as a release, or it's like to get away, to like not go into the depths of the mind and like have those maybe uncomfortable thoughts come up and really look at it. And where does this come from? And why is that? And, but like really spend some good time with just the training of the mind. It's, a completely different animal. And why not do it? Why not supplement all you already do as far as exercise and diet and all that? It's, it's just going to exponentially improve things.
Exponentially is right. Because I think it's the final big component. There's not an infinite number of components. We have physical bodies, we should deal with them, exercise, eat right, whatever. We have emotional, energetic bodies, or our minds, we should deal with that. Mm-hmm. So it's the other, it's the elephant in the room, it's the other thing that we should deal with. And, I think we would all probably agree that sweeping things under the rug never ends up serving anybody.
Right.
So, to your point, I think people have to be willing to say, am I interested in taking this on? My thought processes, or my energy, where my entanglement goes, where my emotional and energetic entanglement goes. And if you take it on, just like if you take on exercise or eating healthy or whatever, it pays dividends and it puts you in a different profile if you're consistent with it and you do it enough. And it's a happier profile. It's a more energized profile. It's a clearer profile. It's imagine if your mind were more focused, you would probably be better at your job. You'd probably come up with good solutions to problems, which would impress people, including the people that pay your salary. I mean, you would get promotions because you're the clearest thinker in the group. There's tremendous immediate benefit if you're willing to be kind of committed to that stuff. And aside from that, I'll make one more comment, is that because I contend that when you pursue this over time, it puts you in a whole different state. Imagine when you sit down to meditate or to work with your mind and emotions and your thoughts, you're not that stressed to begin with.
Mm.
You're yeah, you're not purging or washing away as much stuff because you do that more consistently. You start from a different point. You're higher up the mountain, and then from there you can go even higher, and it puts you into places of very calm, very deep perception that humans typically don't get to because we're being bombarded all the time, and it's holding us down with all these daily energies and thought forms that we have to manage constantly. You do a little bit of work, you lift weights a little bit, you get muscles. You work on the lifting weights in your mind and your emotions, and eventually it pays off. And then, of course, there are benefits over time in your life, but when you sit down to meditate, you have out of the gate, not always, but out of the gate, you're starting at a different place. So you have a qualitatively different experience. There are times when you could just sit there and you're just blissed. You're just sitting there and you just feel all this energy pouring through you. And you can put that into every corner of your life.
Yeah.
Anything,
awesome.
It works.
Yeah.
It requires persistence and it requires effort, as do most good things in life. But if we buy some of my initial premises that it's about energy, and it's about energy management and manipulation, and it's about the effects on your consciousness and your clarity and how you experience the world, your perceptions, your intuition and your intuitiveness, all that is impacted by having more energy. So if you do your homework, which isn't always easy or fun, just like going to the gym isn't easy or fun every day, but if you do it, it pays dividends, and you come out of it different than you went in.
Yeah. Or you brush your teeth every day. You don't have to go to the dentist for cavities, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But you have to be consistent. You can't say I did that last week ago Monday. The dentist is going to call bullshit on that.
Well, and why I think this is so important for even just our clients here, is in the work that we do with clients. Like, I think it's pretty common to, for some folks it's like, I've had like a long day and the kids have been a pain in the ass. Really, I have to journal now and I have to, deal with my shit. Like it's almost, it's more of a burden versus if you could introduce some meditation or calm your mind or get into a place where it's, more of a peaceful experience. It's not so heavy. Right. Or there's not so much resistance to look at maybe some of the challenges that are occurring in your life. I think meditation serves as a very great supplemental practice for the more kind of conscious reprogramming the mind, using the tools and, worksheets that we use here with clients. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with all your guys' tools, but yeah, I think you can, and I appreciate what you're saying about like, oh, I'm exhausted. Last thing I want to do is sit down and journal. And if I journal, I'm just going to write everything sucks. And I hate journaling, but it, of course it's valuable, but there are times when maybe you just need to sit down and just say, I'm just going to let go. I'm going to let go. I'm going to wash all that crap off me. I feel all this stress. It's like taking a shower, like that dirt wasn't yours. It was on you. It's having an effect on you, but you get in the shower and you don't do much but passively let it wash off you. And we talked a lot about focusing in the meditation techniques, but sometimes what you want to just do is just let go. Because largely most of the crap that we're dealing with, it's not inherently ours. The deeper we go, the deeper we realize that the crap isn't us. The energy that you felt because somebody screamed at you, that's easier to see. But all the emotional energy that people have put on you, maybe over the course of your whole life, you start to think, well, I'm just me. This is how I feel. But it's a lot of that has been imposed on you. So can you let go? Can you release some of those things and say, well, that's not me. Those are just things I got used to feeling, or my mind got used to thinking. Can I work on letting this stuff go and see what's underneath it all. It's like I often like to use the metaphor of like a windshield on your car. You can get dirty, but it's not inherently the nature of the windshield. The windshield's inherently clear and clean, but if you're not doing your work regularly to get that stuff out of the way,
or if you don't fill your windshield wiper fluid tank,
exactly. If you're out your hosed.
Yeah.
So I feel like in today's world, it seems like a paradox. Like, well, like, dude, we're not in a cave in the Himalayas. Like, we're not, sitting around, like. But I'm like, yeah, that's why we need this stuff.
Exactly right. Yeah,
because it's damn stressful. Like those guys are smart enough. They went and did that shit, and they didn't commute to work. There's a lot of things that they didn't do. So whereas we're here with a lot to manage.
Right.
So I say, get on with managing it.
Yeah. Well, as always, this is great stuff. I'm sure we'll have some more awesomeness to follow up on for our next
you're good at that. Yeah, you're good at that. Well, process this stuff, see where I rambled too much and see where I've left things off. And I'm sure you'll get back and let me know, and we'll dive into whatever comes next out of this conversation.
Yeah. No, this was perfect. Really enjoyed it. Is this one of the things that you aim to do with Ironbird Dharma is, I guess, meditation training for folks if they wanted it, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's like everything we talked about today. It's like, well, what are you being impacted by, and should you try to counter that? And how do you do that with mindfulness practices? And how do you do that with meditation practices? And, I think at a high level, that's kind of it. It's I guess I want to argue everything fits under that umbrella nicely. And maybe the larger umbrella is energy management and consciousness management. So for me, that's what Ironbird is about, is how are you managing your energy, your perceptions, your consciousness to your advantage, to improve your life, your lifestyle, your awareness, your success, anything that you want to go after. I mean, I think I would argue, like anyone would say, well, if the more energy I have, the more clear I am, the more focused I am, the more relaxed I am, the better I can do at the things I want. I might want to be a stamp collector, or I want to be a sword swallower. I don't know what you want to be, but you could probably be better at anything that you choose to be. Maybe you're a realtor, maybe you're a surgeon. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Like, whatever it is you are and you've chosen for yourself, inherently, I believe, less clutter, more energy serves you in whatever your aspirations are. So to me, that's Ironbird, is like, what are you trying to achieve, and can you do it more efficiently and add some more tools, arrows to the quiver.
Cool. Awesome. Love it. So anyone listening that wants to reach out or learn more about what Walter's doing, ironbirddharma.com.
Awesome.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you, Brian. Great, as always.
Take care.
You too.